Well, good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Bill.
We are here today talking about, one, the government shutdown. Is the government going to close or not? The federal government.
Yeah, it sure looks like it will. We've got the Senate, which is pretty much controlled by the Democrats right now, and they're wanting to pass a continuing budget. But the Republicans in the House tend to be sort of fractured. They've got the Tea Party group and then the more traditional Republicans, and they're pretty much being dominated by the Tea Party right now, and they don't want to have a continuing budget.
You think Boehner can speak for all the Republicans?
Well, he clearly can't. They're basically dictating what he can and can't do, and he doesn't have the control of the whole group. It used to be, that the negotiation was between the president and the leader of the opposite party, and
right.
They would negotiate and work out a deal, and
they can speak for the whole party.
Right.
And the president can speak for his party.
Exactly, but that's no longer the case. Boehner can't speak for the Republicans, and so it's not clear who's representing the Republican Party. So they have some problems, and will they pass a budget or maybe extension or something? Maybe, but doesn't look good.
So let's talk about that. What impact does that have on the markets if the government closes? Is that a positive, negative? It depends on who you listen to.
Well, it's a negative from my point of view. Is first of all, in housing, a lot of the government-backed housing is going to be delayed at least. So that people who are in the process of trying to finance a home, get a mortgage, that whole process is likely to be delayed. And anytime you cut expenditures, that has a ripple effect through the whole economy.
So how do you think that would, a closure of the federal government, how do you think that would affect GDP in the fourth quarter? Because the federal year starts October 1st.
Right.
And that's our fourth quarter from a calendar perspective. So how would that affect, you think, the GDP in the fourth quarter?
I'll answer that if you tell me how long it's going to be shut down.
I think it'll be shut down in less than a month.
Less than a month? Well, think about that. 1 month is a third of
the quarter,
right?
Exactly. So is it 1% of GDP on an annualized basis?
Oh, it's probably going to be more than that if it's a full month.
All right. So let's talk that through. If GDP is down, then maybe we don't have the hiring coming back that we need. How does that impact Fed policy?
Fed policy, probably that's going to push their decision further out.
Well,
absolutely. They're not going to cut back on their purchase of the securities until they know that the economy is coming back, and that's one reason. That's one argument about why they have delayed so far. Okay, they wanted to see what was going to happen with the budget process. And we've got two issues.
What you're saying is their worst fears are coming true.
Oh yeah.
In terms of the government.
Potentially, but there's something even more important than the budget right now, and that is the extension of the debt. Because if the U.S. gets in a position where it's not going to honor its debt and can't pay for the debt, what happens then? Well, all of a sudden, U.S. Treasuries become much less secure.
Well, and I've heard 2 or 3 dates. Jack Lew, Secretary of Treasury, has come out with 2 or 3 dates. He actually has come out with one date, but others have come out with other dates. Who knows when the real date is?
Right.
But roughly, it's sometime around October the 15th. I've heard the 12th, I've heard the 15th, I've heard the 27th.
But let's say before the end of October sometime, right? They might have to begin defaulting on debt. And if that happened, treasuries are going to become less secure. That means interest rates are going to spike up, despite everything the Fed is doing. Because the Fed can't do much more than they've already done. Okay, interest rates can't go below 0. They can't.
You mean nominal rates? Real rates?
Yeah, right. Nominal rates can't go below 0.
Right.
And so there's not a lot else that they can do. And if they default, we're going to see some significant spikes in interest rates.
Well, so let's talk about leaving all that behind and going to the ABS East Convention in Miami Beach. All right.
Oh.
Let's let's leave all the politics behind. Let's go down and party for a while.
Well, I don't know. I think the last 2 times I've been to Miami, there have been hurricanes. So,
But it was a big convention.
Yeah.
You didn't care.
Right, exactly.
It was a big, strong building. You cared. All right. So let's talk about that. All right. Let's talk about the current status of the secondary market and really the attempts to rebuild some of these conduits. What we're seeing in terms of the private players coming back into the secondary market.
Well, there's a lot of interest in getting the secondary market going again, and the focus has been primarily on jumbos because the federal government, GSEs, have been picking up all of the conforming stuff. And so a couple of things are likely to happen. Okay, the GSEs are being wound down, so to speak, and so the expectation is that their fees are going to go up and their conforming limits are going to go down. That's going to mean that there is more potential for private players in the secondary market. That's all good. And what we're seeing is that there's a lot of interest in what we've been doing with extracting all of that data, running all the rules, doing the analysis on all of that data. It's never been done before.
Right.
And so now there's a lot of the companies that are trying to reform their conduits are very interested in having that availability of the data and to be able to do that kind of analysis and due diligence on those loans.
If you were going to start over with a clean slate, just start over, what kind of phrases do you think you might think about when you built a new one? So let me sort of, would you think about compliance be a big catchword?
Well, yes. I mean, compliance is a big one. Transparency is a big one.
How about speed?
Speed. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's amazing how little time many of these processes have available. I don't know how to say that. But you take these correspondent lenders and they're trying to process this stuff very, very quickly. When you think of the total time, there's a long time between the time that mortgage is originally originated and the time it goes into this security. And yet, each piece of that seems to have wanting to be compressed. So,
and some of the ways to compress that have to do with doing things simultaneously as opposed to sequentially.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, the process has been a sequential assembly line.
Very much so.
And so some players in the marketplace are looking at doing things simultaneously, really speeding that up.
Right, and the way you do that is to have that data so that you can mix and match it as necessary.
That's right. The other thing is just so compliance, speed, transparency, and then just data itself.
Right.
That's a big deal.
The data is not only important for the current deal, but it's also important for the next deal.
That's right.
Okay, because you have that data so that you can compare and contrast what you've done in the past with what's coming in the door in the future. Historically, there's been the zero memory.
That's right. It's just a process the next deal.
Yeah, you just turn it through and crank the wheel. But you don't really know how this compares to what you did before in terms of your pricing, in terms of your exposure, the overall risk, all of that.
So really several questions. Are you getting better? First, let's back up. Are you complete? Are you doing everything you warranted and represented to those downstream you were doing?
Uh-huh.
So I call that completeness, if you will.
Sure.
All right? Are you doing what you said you were going to do?
Uh-huh.
The second thing is, how is that changing over time? So how is your risk and your compliance, your performance, all of that together, how's that changing over time? So we benchmark that. And then the third thing is, how are you doing versus others in the marketplace? So one is on an absolute basis,
right,
and one is on a relative basis. How are you doing versus the other players? If it takes you 15 days to cycle on average those loans, that means your correspondent sellers are on their warehouse lines for 15 days. If you're doing it in 10, they're only on them for 10, and so they're getting basically 3 turns in a month instead of 2.
Right. And since they've never had this opportunity to do this comparison in the past, it's changing their whole mindset about how they do business.
Right.
Right. And it takes a while to start internalizing the opportunities that exist so that you can improve your business or even change the way you do business.
Well, speaking of changing the way we do business, we're going to have to get off now after our 10 minutes, or we're going to have to change the way we do business. So our 10 minutes is up. This is F&C's Morning View. I'm Bill Rayburn with Bob Dorsey. You all have a fantastic week.